My name is Edward Miller, I'm 66 years old, and for the past 24 years, one door in my house has never been opened, the basement door. When my son Ryan was a boy, he used to tug at the handle, curious. I'd always tell him, calm and firm, it's dangerous down there, bad wiring, old paint, things that can hurt you. He stopped asking around 12. But that door guarded more than dust or rusted tools. It kept a promise, one I made to my wife, Margaret, before she died in the spring of 2000. After her funeral, I built a small room behind the far wall of the basement and sealed it myself. Inside, I placed her envelopes, our house deed, and one small wooden box she had pressed into my hands. "This will keep our son safe someday," she'd said. For years, it was only memory and silence, until the day Ryan brought home a woman named Melissa. That was when the door stopped feeling safe. Tell me where you're watching from, and hit like if you've ever kept a door closed, not out of fear, but to protect the truth. Melissa came into our lives one quiet Sunday in late spring. Ryan called a week earlier, his voice bright in a way I hadn't heard since college. "Dad, I want you to meet someone," he said. "She's different." Different. That word always hides something. When they pulled into the driveway, I was trimming the hedge by the porch. She stepped out first, tall, careful in her movements, dressed too well for a casual visit. Her smile was perfect, her handshake soft but practiced. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Mr. Miller. Ryan's told me so much." Inside, she commented on everything, the photographs, the oak furniture, even the smell of the house. "So warm," she said. "You must love living here. Did you remodel recently?" I told her no, I hadn't changed much since Margaret passed. Her eyes lingered on the framed wedding photo on the mantel. "Beautiful woman," she said. "You two built a lot together, I can tell." It sounded like praise, but her tone had measurement in it. Every compliment was a probe. Dinner went smoothly enough. Ryan was radiant, laughing, proud to show her off. Melissa played the part perfectly, attentive, affectionate, saying just enough to make you feel included. But I'd lived long enough to recognize a rhythm beneath the surface. Between bites of roast chicken, her questions came like threads being pulled. "Do you still work full-time? Is the mortgage fully paid? Who helps you with the bills, or the property upkeep?" Each time, I gave a mild, unhelpful answer. She smiled politely, but her eyes flickered, disappointed, maybe. Ryan didn't notice. He kept reaching for her hand, as if the room had disappeared around them. When they left that evening, she turned at the door and said, "You have such a peaceful home, Mr. Miller. I hope we'll spend a lot of time here." Something in the way she said we made me uneasy. In the weeks that followed, Melissa appeared often, always helpful, always pleasant. She brought pies from the local bakery, offered to organize the attic, suggested new curtains, to brighten the place. She laughed easily, but there was no warmth in her laughter. It was a performance, and I was the audience she hoped to convince. I watched quietly. I'd learned from Margaret that silence often tells you more than questions ever could. Ryan talked about moving forward, maybe buying a house together, maybe marriage. I congratulated him, though my chest tightened each time her name came up. "She's good for me, Dad," he said once. "She's stable, organized, focused." "She sounds perfect," I replied, and he smiled, not hearing the weight behind the word. Months passed, and one evening she joined me on the back porch while Ryan took a call inside. The sun was setting, the sky turning gold behind the fir trees. She leaned against the railing, quiet for a moment, then said, "You've built a lot here. Must feel strange to think about what happens to all of this one day." I turned to her. "Strange? Not really. Margaret and I made our plans long ago." She tilted her head slightly. "Of course. Estate planning, right? Everyone should. Ryan told me you're very careful with that sort of thing." There was no accusation in her voice, just interest. Too much interest. Careful, I said. Yes. That's the word. That night, after they left, I went to the basement door. My hand rested on the lock, feeling the faint cool of the metal. Margaret's handwriting still labeled the key, for Edward only. I didn't open it, I just needed to make sure it was still there, still safe. When Ryan called a month later to say they were engaged, I congratulated him sincerely. I wanted him to be happy. Every father does. But as I hung up, I looked toward that locked door again. Sometimes the things we protect aren't only about money or property. Sometimes they're about foresight, the kind that comes from love mixed with fear. Margaret had once told me, one day, someone will try to reach for what isn't theirs. When that happens, don't defend with anger, defend with patience. Let the truth wait behind the lock until it's time. I didn't know then that time was already coming. At their engagement dinner, Melissa wore a silver dress and thanked me for hosting. She made a toast, smooth, charming, the kind of speech that makes people clap. But when she looked at me, just for a second, her eyes weren't smiling. After everyone left, I stayed in the empty dining room, collecting plates. Through the window, I saw them laughing in the driveway, headlights washing across the old maple tree. Ryan kissed her forehead, she glanced back at the house one last time. That was when I knew, she wasn't just marrying my son. She was planning her entry. The basement door stayed locked. And for the first time in years, I changed the key's hiding place. The wedding took place on a mild September afternoon in 2021, the kind of day that fools you into thinking the world is at peace. The vineyard outside Salem shimmered under soft light, and the air smelled of late grapes and cedar. Ryan looked proud, a young man who believed he'd finally outrun loneliness. Melissa was radiant in white lace, smiling with the exact precision of a woman who knows where every camera stands. I sat in the front row, hands folded, watching them exchange vows under a wooden arch wrapped with lilies. I thought of Margaret then, her laughter, her stillness, and wondered what she'd say if she saw this moment. She'd probably touch my arm and whisper, "Don't worry, Edward. Truth has its own timing." After the ceremony, while guests toasted champagne and the music softened into background murmur, I gave them my wedding gift. It wasn't wrapped in paper or ribbon, it arrived quietly, a $15,000 transfer from the Miller Family Trust, an account I had quietly renewed 2 months before the wedding. I told them it was to help start their life together, to buy something lasting. Melissa pressed her cheek against mine and said, "You didn't have to do that, Dad." She used the word dad easily, too easily, as if she'd been rehearsing it. I smiled and said only, "I know." But what she didn't realize was that the transfer carried something more than generosity. The trust she received from carried a condition, one established years ago by Margaret herself, built into the family's estate plan after her cancer diagnosis. Every disbursement from the Miller Trust, large or small, required a reaffirmation of the original clause. No external claimant can inherit or access the principal of the trust without blood relation or pre-approved consent from the executor. That clause, the invisible spine of our family's security, was Margaret's idea. She'd drafted it after watching a friend lose her home to a manipulative son-in-law. "Love blinds," she said. "Paper protects." Melissa thought she'd just received a generous wedding gift. In truth, she'd signed her exclusion. The lawyer who handled the paperwork, a discreet man named Douglas Fisher, called me the week after the wedding. "Everything's confirmed, Edward," he said. "The trust transfer went through. The clause remains intact." "Thank you, Doug," I said. "Let it sleep quietly." For almost a year, it did. Ryan and Melissa moved into a small townhouse near Lake Oswego. I visited occasionally, always invited by Ryan, never by her. She'd greet me politely at the door, but there was distance in her smile now, calculation instead of charm. She'd started to show her shape. Little things surfaced first. She'd suggest joint investments, for the family's future, Hint that I might consider transferring the house title sooner rather than later. Why wait? She said once during dinner. Wouldn't it give you peace of mind to know Ryan's settled, everything squared away? I looked at her across the table, calm. Peace doesn't come from paperwork, Melissa. It comes from trust. She smiled thinly. And trust is earned, isn't it? It's proven, I replied. Ryan laughed softly, trying to ease the tension. Come on, you two. You sound like you're in a courtroom. But he could feel it too, the invisible pull between us. The first real test came that winter. I fell on the ice outside the post office and fractured my wrist. Ryan drove me to urgent care, and Melissa came by the next day with flowers. She stood in my kitchen, looking around like someone touring an inheritance. You really shouldn't live alone, Edward, she said. This house is too big for one man. We could move in for a while, help with things. Ryan could set up an office downstairs. Her tone was sweet, but her eyes had already moved toward the hallway, toward the basement. I appreciate the thought, I said, but I'm used to the quiet. Still, she said, smiling, you've kept this place locked up like a museum. Don't you ever want to open the past a little? Some doors, I said, stay closed for good reasons. She laughed. You sound like you're guarding treasure. I looked at her then, really looked, and saw the glint behind the charm. Not treasure, I said. Memory. There's a difference. That night, after they left, I stood again before the basement door. My wrist ached under the bandage as I changed the lock. This time, I replaced the old key with a digital pad, a simple code, but one no stranger could guess, 040875. Margaret's birthday. For a while, things calmed. But beneath the quiet, something was moving. By early 2023, Melissa's patience had thinned. She started talking about planning ahead, about making sure Ryan's future is secure. Every conversation circled back to the same topic, the house, the assets, the inheritance. She dropped phrases like, it's only fair, or, Ryan's worked hard for what's coming. One evening, she brought it up at dinner. Edward, she said suddenly, does Ryan know what he stands to inherit? I mean, after all, you're not getting younger. Ryan frowned. Melissa, come on. It's a reasonable question, she pressed. Every family should have transparency. Transparency, I said slowly, isn't always the same as readiness. The room went still. Ryan's fork clinked against his plate. I'm just saying, she continued, he deserves to know what's his. Nothing is his, I said quietly, until he's ready to protect it. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The message landed like a stone. After they left, I walked through the house in silence. The old wood creaked, the air smelled faintly of varnish and time. Downstairs, I placed my palm against the cold basement door. I could almost hear Margaret's voice again, when someone comes for what isn't theirs, let the truth wait until it must speak. I knew then that moment was near. A week later, Ryan stopped by alone. He seemed uneasy, distracted. Dad, he said, Melissa thinks you're hiding something. I didn't answer immediately. I poured him coffee, waited. She says you're keeping everything locked away, old papers, maybe even Mom's will. She thinks you don't trust us. I met his eyes. Do you think that? He hesitated. I don't know. You've always been private. That's different from secretive, I said. He sighed, rubbing his temples. She's just trying to understand. She worries you might be manipulated by someone, a lawyer, maybe, or that your estate isn't protected. I almost smiled at that. She's right about one thing, I said. It is protected. Ryan nodded, unsure what that meant. Before he left, I told him, son, remember this, love that keeps asking what it's worth eventually proves its own price. He didn't answer. By spring, the tension had become something visible, like weather in the room. Melissa had grown sharper, Ryan quieter. Then came the day that would shift everything, a Friday in May 2023. I was in Seattle for a short business consultation when my phone rang. Ryan's voice was tight, frightened. "Dad." Melissa got into the basement. My breath caught. "How?" She said she guessed the code. "She's down there right now, she's yelling, saying you've been hiding things." I heard rustling, papers, footsteps, a sharp exhale. "Dad, she found documents, the trust, the will, she's furious." I closed my eyes. It was time. "Ryan," I said calmly, "listen carefully. Don't sign anything. Don't touch the wooden box in the back corner. Do you understand?" "Dad, she says Mom left everything to you, not to us. She says you've been controlling everything." "She's lying," I said softly. "Your mother left everything to protect you, not to control you." Silence. Then his voice, small, "She says you don't trust me." "I trust you," I said. "That's why I waited." When I ended the call, I sat there in the quiet of my hotel room, the city lights flickering against the window. I thought of Margaret's last words, the promise I'd made. Then I packed my bag and drove home through the night. The truth was waiting, right where I'd left it, behind the locked door. Before that late-night drive from Seattle, there were months when pressure lived in the walls. Looking back, the signs were steady as a metronome. It began small. In February 2022, Melissa started sending Ryan articles, aging in place, when parents should transfer the deed, tax advantages of early estate planning. He forwarded a few to me with a hopeful note, asterisk worth a read? Asterisk I replied simply, asterisk already planned. Nothing urgent. Asterisk. Then came the offers to help. She arrived on a Saturday with color swatches and a tape measure. "New curtains will lift the room," she said, already at the living room window. "And this carpet, it's due for retirement." She laughed softly at her own joke, then pivoted, "We could stay here a few weeks and handle it. Save you the trouble." I thanked her and set the tape measure back on the console. "I move slowly," I said. "That's how things last." Spring turned to summer. Ryan and Melissa began talking openly about moving in, temporarily. One evening in July, she unfolded a printout at my kitchen table, "Proposed Home Optimization Plan, 2284, Southwest Larch Street." My own address typed across the top. Below it, bullet points: convert basement to office, install smart home system, refinish upstairs floors. A contractor's name sat at the bottom in neat letters, Dale H. Oak Ridge Carpentry ***, with a penciled estimate, $18,400. I read the page and set it down. "You've done a lot of work," I said. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "We just want to help you, Edward. You shouldn't be doing any of this alone." "I'm not," I said, and I meant Margaret as much as any living person. That same week, my mailbox began holding other people's curiosity. A glossy flyer addressed to "Resident, Promised, Reverse Mortgage Solutions, Unlock Your Home's Equity." Asterisk a handwritten note appeared under my doormat, asterisk I buy homes as is. Quick close. Fair price. Asterisk Melissa picked the note up when she came by. "People are vultures," she said, slipping it into her purse. "Good thing you have family." In September, pressure grew a voice. We were at a Sunday dinner, roast chicken, potatoes, the old routine. Ryan reached for a second helping and cleared his throat. "Dad," he said, "have you thought about a timeline? For, estate stuff." "Your father has a plan," I said quietly. Melissa folded her napkin. "Transparency helps everyone. If there are documents we should review together, I can set up a spreadsheet. Inventory, beneficiaries, values. Nothing formal, just a family snapshot. Snapshots, I said, sometimes show too much, sometimes not enough. She smiled. Then show us just enough. I didn't answer. The clock in the hall ticked, steady as a loyal dog. By November, Melissa had the house mapped in her head. She knew where the winter light fell in the dining room, which floorboard near the pantry complained, which door never opened, the basement. Twice I noticed a hair-thin smear on the brass knob, lotion, maybe, or hope. December brought a small storm and a small fall. I slipped on the back steps with a bag of rock salt and bruised my hip. At urgent care, Ryan sat beside me, worried. Melissa joined later with coffee and energy that felt like strategy. You shouldn't climb stairs, she said. Not without grips. We could set you up downstairs for a while. Frame in a bedroom. It's time the house served you. The house has served me, I said. I'm the one who owes it patience. That night, I ordered the digital lock. When it arrived, I set the code to 040875, Margaret's birthday, the only number that felt like a closed circle. I pressed my fingers to the keypad and murmured her name. After New Year's, Melissa shifted tactics. She moved from suggestion to evidence. An email arrived in my inbox on January 18, 2023 from Melissa. Gray at ***, subject line, Ryan's peace of mind. Edward. I know you value order. I do too. Could you share a simple inventory? House, accounts, outstanding liabilities. I can put it in a folder for emergencies. It would help Ryan sleep. M. I printed the email and placed it in the basement room beside Margaret's envelopes. I did not reply. 2 weeks later, she knocked on my study door with a pie from Baker and Bridge. Pecan, she said. Your favorite. She set it down, then glanced at the hall. You ever think about turning the basement into a rec room for grandkids someday? Kids love basements. Kids love honesty more, I said. It keeps the air clean. Her smile tightened. You think I'm not honest? I think you're focused, I said. Sometimes focus forgets its manners. February wore thin. Ryan stopped by alone one rainy Tuesday. He looked older than his 34 years. She's worried you don't like her, he said. I don't dislike her, I said. I dislike speed. She wants us to move forward. Forward isn't always toward, I said. Sometimes it's a circle around. He leaned back, frustrated. Dad, I love her. I know, I said. Love is the reason this conversation matters. In March, Melissa's questions stopped wearing makeup. At a small family cookout, she waited until the plates were down and the air smelled of charcoal. Edward, she said evenly, what exactly is in the basement that needs a keypad? Tools. Papers. Or something Ryan should know about. Ryan stared at his burger. Old things, I said. Nothing that belongs to anyone else. Everything in a family belongs to the family, she replied. Not the promises, I said. Those stay with the person who made them. That night, close to 11, I stepped into the hall to turn off lights and saw her near the basement door, hand on the knob. She didn't jump when she realized I was there. She looked at me, calm, a small smile on her mouth. Curious people find answers, Mr. Miller, she said. Patient people find the right ones, I answered, and relocked the keypad with my thumb. April carried a louder drum. She began suggesting a family meeting to align expectations. Ryan repeated the phrase like it had been handed to him. I agreed to host dinner on April 22. She arrived with a binder. On the cover, Miller Family Assets, Draft. Inside, tabs, placeholders, blank lists. Blank pages are honest, I said. They're waiting, she replied. We ate in measured silence. After pie, she opened the binder. Let's just start simple. Deed, beneficiary designations, trust contacts. I stood, walked to the china cabinet, and took out a single card. I placed it on the table. Douglas Fisher, attorney at law, 503-555-0148. If something happens to me, I said, Douglas will call Ryan. That's the plan. She didn't pick up the card. You've kept everything locked away for years. Why not show him? Because locks exist, I said, when timing matters. Ryan rubbed his eyes. Can we not turn dinner into a deposition? She closed the binder. Of course, she said, and the room cooled. After they left, I walked the yard under the porch light. The maple leaves whispered, and the house exhaled the way old houses do when they're tired of company. I checked the basement once more. The keypad lit, waiting, then slept. The last week of April brought the smallest, sharpest cut. A package arrived addressed to me, but the return label read Oak Ridge Carpentry. Inside, a revised estimate, now $21,900, includes demo of basement wall. I called the number on the letter. Dale. I said. This is Edward Miller. Who requested this? A pause. Ma'am, Melissa did, he said. Said you were ready to open up downstairs. Asked for rush pricing. I'm not, I said. Cancel. Understood, he replied, voice flat with the neutrality of men who've seen families argue in drywall dust. I set the letter on my desk and wrote the date across the top in ink. Then I walked to the basement door and listened to the quiet beyond it, the quiet of lumber and concrete and the room Margaret and I had built with our own hands. On May 3, Ryan texted, * she wants to help. Please don't shut her out. *. I typed and deleted 3 replies before sending one, * I'm protecting what's yours, Ryan. Even from urgency. *. The days that followed felt like the air before a storm. Melissa's visits shortened but grew sharper, like a blade learning its job. She stopped asking about curtains and started asking about signatures. If we added your name to a few things now, she told Ryan on my porch, we'd avoid probate headaches later. It's responsible. I've avoided headaches my whole life, I said from the door. Mostly by waiting. The next afternoon, I found a yellow sticky note on the hallway table. In neat block letters, code guesses, 062000, 112,319. 122,519. Dates that meant something to Ryan and Melissa, their birthdays, their engagement, last Christmas. The note wasn't for me, it was for luck. I folded it once and dropped it into the kitchen trash. That night, I took out Margaret's wooden box from its shelf behind the hidden wall and held it a while. Its weight was small and absolute. I didn't open it. I only breathed with it, the way you hold a sleeping child. On May 12, Melissa arrived alone while Ryan was at work, carrying 3 labeled plastic bins, office, linens, miscellaneous. She set them just inside the front door. We'll start slow, she said. 1 closet at a time. Take them back to your car, I said. I'm not starting anything today. She didn't move. Ryan deserves to know what's his. He will, I said, when he proves he can keep it. She laughed once, without joy. You mean when he keeps you happy? I mean when he keeps himself honest. She left the bins and walked out. I carried each one to the porch and waited until she returned with the car to collect them. We stood in the driveway like 2 people negotiating weather. You could make this easy, she said. I am, I said. I'm choosing the right hard. The following week, the day before Seattle, I rechecked every hinge and screw on the hidden door. I reset the keypad, then set it back again to 040875, because nothing felt safer than her birthday. I wrote the code on a small card and tucked it into my wallet behind a photo of Margaret in a blue scarf by Cannon Beach, 1996. Insurance against forgetting. Insurance against panic. All those months add up to a single sentence. The house had become a prize, and I had become the obstacle. But I knew something Melissa did not. The prize was never the house. It was the lesson sleeping behind the wall, a letter, a photo, a key, and a mother's steady hand, still guiding from a year with too many hospital rooms. On the morning I left for Seattle, I walked one slow lap through the rooms. I paused at the basement door and touched the keypad until it woke and glowed, then went dark again. Hold, I said aloud, to the door, to the past, to myself. By dusk, I was northbound on I-5, taillight stretching like a string pulled tight. My phone lay face down on the passenger seat. When it finally rang the next day and Ryan's voice broke through, Dad. Melissa got into the basement I realized the months of pressure had only done their work. They had brought us, step by deliberate step, to the place where truth would have to speak. And I was ready to let it. When I reached Portland that Friday night, the rain had already turned the roads into rivers of light. My hands were steady on the wheel, but inside, my pulse was slow and deliberate, the kind you feel before an old truth finally wakes up. The house looked calm from the outside. Porch light on. Curtains drawn. Nothing broken, nothing forced. But when I unlocked the front door, the silence felt disturbed, like a room that had been breathed in by strangers. Ryan was sitting on the couch, elbows on his knees, face pale and damp from tears or rain. Melissa stood near the bookshelf, one of the basement folders open in her hands. Her hair was messy, her expression furious, but her voice was too controlled to be grief. "You hid all of this," she said before I even closed the door. "The trust, the money, the property. You locked it all away like treasure while we built a life thinking you trusted us." I took off my coat slowly and hung it on the hook. "That's exactly what it was," I said. "Treasure. And it wasn't meant for you." Her eyes flashed. "Then who was it for?" "For the man my son would become once he stopped needing people like you." Ryan looked up then, startled, maybe at my calmness, maybe at my words. "Dad, please," he said, voice cracking. "She just wants to understand. You could have told me. You could have trusted me." I nodded. "You're right. I could have. But some lessons don't pass through words, Ryan. They pass through moments like this." Melissa slammed the folder shut. "You sound like you're proud of yourself. Of lying. Of manipulating your own family." "I protected it," I said. "That's different." She stepped closer. "Protected what, Edward? Paper? Money? Or control?" "The promise," I said. "That's all. The promise your mother made me keep." Her mouth twisted. "Your wife's ghost doesn't run this family. You do. And you've used her name as a shield." Ryan flinched, but I didn't raise my voice. "You don't get to say her name like that," I said quietly. "Not in this house." She held my gaze for a few seconds, then turned toward Ryan. "You see? This is what he's like. Possessive. Secretive. You think this letter of hers is real love? It's control. He's made sure you have nothing unless you play the obedient son." Ryan stood now, torn between us. "Melissa, stop. Please." She threw the folder onto the couch. Papers spilled, bank forms, trust statements, Margaret's old handwritten notes. "Then explain this," she said, pointing. "Every cent in your name is under his control. Every asset passes through his approval. That's not protection, Ryan. That's imprisonment." I stepped forward, picking up the scattered pages one by one. "You read what you wanted," I said. "But you never read what matters. I walked past her and down the hall toward the basement door. The keypad blinked faintly in the dim light. I entered the code, 0-4-0-8-7-5, and the lock clicked open with a sound like exhaling. Ryan hesitated at the top of the stairs. "Dad, what's down there?" "The truth," I said. "And your mother's voice." Melissa folded her arms. "You think we're walking into one of your little lessons?" "Not lessons," I said. "Farewells." I switched on the basement light and descended the stairs. The air smelled faintly of old cedar and dust. The wall at the far end still looked solid, painted the same pale gray it had always been. But I pressed my hand against one board, then another, until a small latch released with a soft click. Behind it, the hidden room waited, untouched since 2000. The same low shelf. The same tin box of Margaret's handwriting. And, at the center, the small wooden box. Melissa stepped in first, eyes wide, scanning every inch as though calculating value. Ryan followed, slower. "This," I said, touching the box, "was the only thing your mother asked me to guard. I never opened it without her permission. That permission comes now, through you." I handed it to Ryan. He hesitated. "What's inside?" "Read," I said. He lifted the lid. Inside was a single family photo, the three of us in Cannon Beach, 1996. Beneath it lay a small brass key and a sealed envelope marked in Margaret's handwriting, "For my son, when he needs the truth." Melissa scoffed. "Another performance." Ryan ignored her. He broke the seal carefully and unfolded the letter. His voice shook as he read aloud. "My dear boy. If you are holding this, it means someone has tried to take what was built from love and turn it into greed. Your father is not keeping you from your future. He is keeping your future safe. What we built is not meant to be traded, or counted, or promised. It is meant to remind you that love must never become a transaction. When you find someone who asks what you own instead of who you are, remember this room. Protection sometimes looks like distance. Love sometimes sounds like silence. Mom." The words hung in the basement air like quiet music. Ryan stared at the letter, his breathing uneven. Melissa's face hardened. "This is manipulation. Emotional blackmail from beyond the grave." Ryan folded the letter carefully. "No," he said, voice low. "It's the first honest thing I've heard in months." She turned toward him. "You're just going to believe this?" "A piece of paper." "It's her handwriting," he said. "It's her voice. And it explains everything." I reached for the key resting beside the photo. "That key," I said, "belongs to a safe deposit box downtown. Inside is the same trust document you just read upstairs, but signed by your mother in her own hand, with your name listed as successor. It was never hidden from you. Only for you." Ryan looked at me with tears gathering in his eyes. "She really thought all this through, didn't she?" "She did," I said. "She saw things I didn't want to see. Including this moment." Melissa's lips trembled, not from guilt, but from rage. "You planned this," she said. "You both did. You'll regret treating me like a thief." "No," Ryan said quietly. "I already regret not listening sooner." She stared at him as though seeing a stranger. For a long time, none of us spoke. Then she said, "You'll end up alone, both of you." I met her eyes. Better alone than owned. She stormed up the stairs, heels striking the wood like a metronome of anger. A minute later, the front door slammed. Ryan stood still for a long time, the letter still in his hand. Finally, he whispered, "She loved us both, didn't she?" "Yes," I said. "Enough to teach us differently." We stood there until the house grew quiet again, the kind of quiet that comes only after a storm. When we finally went upstairs, I locked the basement door behind us. I didn't change the code this time. It no longer needed guarding. That night, Ryan slept in his old room. I sat in the kitchen with the light off, listening to the rain against the windows. The house felt different, lighter, almost grateful. The secret had done what it was meant to do. It had revealed what love was not. Before bed, I whispered into the dark, "Thank you, Margaret. You were right. The truth knows when to speak." Outside, the rain softened to a hush, and for the first time in years, I slept without fear that anyone would try to open that door again. By morning, the house had the stillness of a confession. The rain had stopped sometime before dawn, leaving drops clinging to the windows like fingerprints. I woke early, before Ryan stirred, and brewed coffee in the kitchen. The air smelled of oak and cooling metal. For the first time in years, the basement no longer weighed on me like a secret. At 7, Ryan walked in, hair still damp from a shower. He looked younger somehow, tired, but free. He poured himself a cup and sat across from me. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, "She's gone." I nodded. "I know. She took her car, her things, and whatever she could grab in 5 minutes. Didn't say goodbye." "That's her way," I said. "When people come for something that isn't theirs, they leave fast once they realize it never belonged to them." He traced the rim of his mug with his thumb. "I kept hearing her say you were hiding things. But standing there last night, in that room, I realized she was the one hiding, behind her charm, her plans, her need to be secure." "She was afraid," I said. "Fear dresses itself in control. She wanted to feel safe, and she thought taking from others would get her there." He nodded slowly. "You think she ever loved me?" I looked at him, my only son, a man built from my hands and Margaret's gentleness. "I think she loved what you made her feel, that she could belong. That's a kind of love, but it doesn't last. It has an appetite." He took a deep breath. "I should have seen it sooner." "No," I said softly. "You had to live it. That's the only way the lesson becomes yours." We spent that morning quietly sorting through what she'd left behind, her perfume on the hallway rug, a forgotten scarf on the coat rack, a gold hairpin resting on the sink. Traces of calculation disguised as intimacy. By noon, Ryan found himself standing again near the basement door. "Can I go down there one more time?" he asked. "Of course," I said. We descended together, steps creaking under the weight of memory. The air was cooler now, holding the faint scent of dust and cedar. The folder lay where she'd dropped it, corners bent, pages slightly crumpled. Ryan knelt and began collecting them, stacking them neatly. "She really tore through this place," he murmured. "It's like she wanted to find something worth fighting over." "She did," I said. "And she did find it. But it wasn't what she expected." He looked up. "You mean Mom's letter?" "Exactly. That letter's worth more than any of this paper. Because it can't be rewritten." He smiled faintly. "You two planned everything." "Not everything," I said. "Just enough." We spent the rest of the day cleaning the room. I sealed the hidden door again, this time without sadness. Ryan placed the letter in a small frame and set it on the basement shelf. "It belongs here," he said. "Where it started." As we climbed back up, I caught his shoulder. "Ryan," I said quietly, "remember one thing. Protection isn't ownership. Someday, when you have a family, don't hold on to things too tightly. Let the truth guard them instead." He nodded. "I will." That night, we had dinner together, simple stew, bread, and a bottle of Margaret's favorite red wine I'd been saving since 2000. We talked about her, the way she used to hum while folding laundry, her sharp sense of humor, the way she always knew when silence meant more than comfort. "Do you think she knew Melissa would come?" Ryan asked after a while. "I think she understood human nature," I said. "She knew greed doesn't always come wearing anger. Sometimes it comes smiling. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the window where twilight had begun to settle. I hate that I let her into this house. You didn't let her in, I said. You invited the idea of her, the idea that love could fix loneliness. That's what young hearts do. There's no shame in it. He was quiet for a moment, then said, I read that letter again this afternoon. I looked at him. She wrote, when you doubt your father, remember this, protection sometimes looks like distance. He paused, his voice softer now. I never really understood you until last night. You were never keeping me out. You were waiting for me to see. I smiled. Your mother saw the man you could become. I just kept the door closed until you were ready to open it. He laughed quietly. You always did love your metaphors. I learned from the best, I said. She never wasted a word. Later that evening, Ryan went to bed early. I stayed up, sitting near the fire with Margaret's photograph in my hands. The flames reflected in the glass, the two of us on the beach, her scarf blowing in the wind. I remembered that day clearly. She'd told me, Edward, when I'm gone, don't bury me in grief. Keep me in the things we built, the garden, the wood, the quiet. Now, the quiet finally made sense. The next morning, Ryan told me he was going to call a lawyer, not to contest, but to confirm. I want to make sure everything's in order, he said. No more secrets. Good, I said. But remember, order isn't about control. It's about peace. A week later, Melissa's lawyer reached out briefly. The message was simple, no claims. Client withdrawing from all proceedings. She had understood the futility of her position. The trust was airtight, the assets untouchable, the evidence unshakable. She had lost long before she even started to fight. Ryan didn't gloat. He just sighed and said, I hope she finds something real someday. She will, I said. Everyone does, if they live long enough to face themselves. Months passed. The house grew lighter, quieter. Ryan stayed with me for a while, fixed the porch rail, repainted the guest room, cooked on weekends. Slowly, the air filled again with life that wasn't borrowed. One Sunday in late autumn, he came to me with a small box. I've been thinking, he said. About what Mom meant by keeping the wrong people away. Maybe that box did more than protect money. Maybe it protected me. It did, I said. But now it's your turn to protect yourself. He nodded, then set the box on the table between us. Then keep it here for now, he said. As a reminder. I watched him leave for work that Monday, his posture taller, his movements slower, a man who'd learned where the edges of trust truly lie. That evening, I went down to the basement one last time. I unlocked the door, stepped into the quiet, and placed the wooden box back in its corner. The framed letter glowed softly under the weak light. I did what you asked, Margaret, I whispered. He's safe now. Then I locked the door, not to hide, but to preserve. Outside, the garden was still damp from the morning rain. The maple tree had turned red, and a pair of crows perched on the fence, silent. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching the light fade. The house no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like home again, a place where secrets had finished their work and gone to rest. Some doors, I realized, are never meant to be opened in defense, only in truth. And the truth, once spoken, no longer needs a lock. We went to the bank the following Friday, May 19, 2023. First Cascadia, downtown. A clerk checked my ID, then Ryan's, then the key. The vault door shut behind us with the heavy calm you only hear in old places. Box beat 412 slid onto the table. I let Ryan open it. Inside lay what mattered and what proved it, the original Miller Family Trust, an updated schedule of assets dated August 12, 2021, a notarized copy of the prenuptial agreement Melissa had signed July 15, 2021, and a second envelope in Margaret's careful hand, "For my boys, if there is noise around you." Ryan broke the seal and read silently first. Then he placed both hands flat on the table and read aloud. "If voices grow loud, let paper speak. Douglas Fisher will hold the line you drew with me. Edward, don't argue. Ryan, don't beg. Truth doesn't shout. Mom." There was no drama in it. Only instruction. We copied the documents, signed the bank's inventory log, and walked out into a bright afternoon that felt cleaner. Douglas met us 2 blocks away at his office on SW Alder Street. He laid the prenup on his desk, tapped the page where Melissa's initials repeated in neat rows. "Clause 9, he said. "Separate property remains separate. Any trust disbursement is a conditional gift and may be returned or redirected at the trustee's discretion. You're shielded." Ryan nodded. "I'm not here to punish," he said. "I just need it to be clear." "It is," Douglas replied. "Clarity is mercy when a marriage ends." On June 4, Margaret's birthday month, Ryan asked to host a small dinner at my house. He invited only 3 people: Douglas, our neighbor, Tom Klein, who'd fixed my fence the winter Margaret died, and Margaret's sister, Elaine, who drove down from Longview with a lemon cake wrapped in wax paper. No speeches, no toasts. Just roast chicken and the sound of dishes set gently on wood. After we ate, Ryan stood by the mantel, the framed letter in his hand. He didn't clear his throat. He didn't pace. He spoke as if he were sitting beside a hospital bed. "I doubted my father," he said. "I mistook protection for control. Tonight I want the people who loved my mother to hear what she wrote and what I learned." He read the letter, the same one from the wooden box, the same handwriting that had carried us through. The room didn't move. When he finished, he set the frame back down and turned to me. "Dad," he said, "I'm sorry. I wanted love to add up to proof. You gave me proof and I called it distance. I answered the only way that mattered. I waited because she asked me to. And because you're worth the wait." Elaine wiped her eyes and smiled like someone who had expected this moment for years. Tom nodded once, the way men do when words are finished. Ryan took a folded paper from his pocket and handed it to Douglas. "I transferred $15,000 back to the trust this morning," he said. "Same amount as the wedding gift. It was meant to start something. Let it start the right thing." Douglas glanced at the receipt, June 4, 10:17 a.m., reference 2347, T***, and slipped it into a new file. Under memo for the lesson, Ryan added. He wasn't showing off. He was marking the spot. 2 days later, on June 6, Melissa's attorney sent a final letter: "Client declines mediation. No further claims. No apology. No explanation. Just a closing line typed in a neutral font." Paper ended what paper began. Ryan and I met once more with Douglas on June 12. We updated beneficiary designations, added a simple letter of intent, and placed Margaret's framed words in the safe along with the trust. Ryan signed as successor trustee, I signed as the father who was finally allowed to exhale. "We don't need to touch anything else," Ryan said when we stepped onto the sidewalk. "We just need to live quietly." Quiet arrived in practical steps. He called the jeweler and arranged the return of the engagement band. He boxed the last of Melissa's scarves and delivered them to her sister without commentary. He cancelled the contractor's estimate and forwarded the confirmation to me, order #OH2198 cancelled at customer request. No gloating. No messages. Clean exits leave fewer stains. On July 7, I found him in the basement with a small notebook. "Inventory," he said, catching my look. "For emergencies only. Dates, contacts, where to find things." He wrote one line at the top in block letters: "Respect is not inherited." He underlined it once. We didn't seal the room again that day. We left the hidden latch unlatched, the way you leave a book open when you plan to return to the same sentence. The protection no longer needed a secret. It needed memory. In August, we took a drive to Cannon Beach. Same stretch of sand as the photograph, same gray sky that lifts later if you wait. Ryan carried the framed picture to the waterline, held it there for a minute, then brought it back dry. "She taught us to wait," he said. "We're still learning." At home, he drafted a short statement for himself, 3 lines he printed and taped inside his wallet. Asterisk love is not access. Asterisk silence can be care. Asterisk paper is a promise you make to those you may never meet. He didn't tell me he'd done it. I found out months later when he slipped his wallet onto the counter and the note peeked out. I didn't mention it. Some lessons ought to ride in a pocket without applause. Summer thinned into early fall. On September 1, the court stamped the divorce decree. No property division beyond what they'd purchased together, split evenly. No alimony. Clean. We marked the day by doing nothing ceremonial. He replaced the basement light with a stronger bulb and fixed the loose stare I'd kept meaning to address. I baked a pie I'm no good at and we ate it anyway. One evening later that month, Ryan asked, "Do you ever wish you'd told me sooner?" I thought about late nights in hospital corridors, about Margaret's hand squeezing mine, about the way fear can make a man hand over his tools just to hear silence. "No," I said. "I wish you hadn't needed the lesson. But I don't wish it had come early. Early lessons don't stick." He nodded. Then we did it right. We settled into a routine that didn't advertise itself: Sunday dinners, a standing Tuesday walk through the neighborhood, coffee on Saturdays while the house warmed up from the night. He started coaching a youth team at the community center, kids with untucked shirts and big voices. He was patient with them. He weighted them into listening. On October 8, we held a small remembrance for Margaret under the maple. Elaine came again. Tom brought folding chairs. No speeches. I read the last line of her second note, asterisk truth doesn't shout. Asterisk then we sat and let the leaves do the talking. Sometimes, late at night, I walked the hall and passed the basement door. I still touch the keypad, asterisk asterisk 040875 asterisk asterisk, out of habit, not fear. The code is less a lock now and more a date that means our house stayed ours, our name stayed clean, our son stayed himself. When the wind lifts, the house answers like an old friend. In the morning, I brew coffee and open the kitchen window to the garden. Ryan leaves for work with a wave. The maple throws patterns across the table. The floorboards creak politely. Peace returns to its chair. I think of what Margaret wrote, asterisk protection sometimes looks like distance. Asterisk I add my own line now, in the quiet, to no one but her, protection sometimes sounds like a basement door closing softly behind the truth. Love is not money. Family loyalty ends where manipulation begins. Evidence and patience win over rage. Dignity is the final word. And in this house, at last, the final word is spoken low, like a prayer, like a promise kept. Melissa left 3 days after that basement night. No scenes, no apology, just silence and the faint smell of her perfume in the hallway. Ryan watched from the porch as her car disappeared down the street, the taillights shrinking into red points, then nothing. He didn't cry. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, breathing like someone who'd finally come up for air. The divorce was final by autumn. Fast, quiet, clean, just as Margaret would have wanted. No claims, no arguments. The house became still again, filled only with the hum of the refrigerator and the whisper of the wind through the maple leaves outside. For a while, Ryan moved back in. He worked from my study during the day, cooked simple dinners at night, and sometimes, before bed, we'd sit in the living room together without saying much. There was no tension left between us, just space for understanding. One evening in late October, he asked, do you think Mom ever doubted you? I smiled. She doubted everyone, Ryan. That's what made her so careful. But she never doubted love. She just wanted to make sure it wouldn't be mistaken for trust on paper. He nodded slowly. She was right. That winter, the garden went bare. We spent weekends repairing what time had neglected, the loose shutter, the cracked porch step, the peeling paint near the kitchen window. Ryan worked quietly, measuring twice, cutting once. I watched him and thought of Margaret's phrase, asterisk, he will learn by building. Asterisk, she had been right about that too. By January, life had settled into a rhythm. Ryan had found an apartment nearby but still came every Sunday for dinner. He'd bring groceries and we'd talk about small things, work, weather, the kids he coached at the community center. But sometimes, between the ordinary, the past would surface. He said once, you know, I thought inheritance meant money. Something to claim, something to keep. But it's not. It's what you live by, not what you live on. I said nothing, only smiled. Because that was it, the lesson Margaret had left, the one I'd kept behind a locked door for half a lifetime. It wasn't about property or control. It was about moral ground. About giving your child the tools to face deceit and still choose decency. When spring came, Ryan planted new rose bushes near the fence. He said they were for her. I think they were for himself. Every morning after, I'd see him out there, watering them, quiet, patient, the same patience his mother had once carried like armor. On her birthday, April 8th, we went to Cannon Beach again. The wind was sharp, the sea cold. We stood where the photograph had been taken, holding the frame between us. Ryan looked at the picture, then at the horizon. She'd like it this way, he said. No speeches. Just the tide taking back what belongs to it. I nodded. She always believed the truth finds its level, like water. We left the frame on a flat rock near the edge of the sand. The tide would reach it by dusk. That night, back home, I sat by the window with my coffee, watching the garden in bloom again, the roses bright, the maple leafing new green. Ryan's laughter floated in from outside as he spoke to one of his players on the phone. I thought of the years, the secrets, the protection, the silence. And I knew it had all been worth it. The basement door still stands at the end of the hall, but I no longer keep it locked. Sometimes, when the air grows cool and the house feels too large, I open it just to breathe in the quiet. Inside, on the shelf, the wooden box rests empty now, the letter framed upstairs, the photo gone to the sea. But I keep the box there, because every story needs its proof of ending. Margaret's voice still lives in the walls, in the careful order of things, in the calm that follows truth. That is the real inheritance, not the trust, not the property, not even the protection. It's the peace that remains when the lesson is learned, when love is no longer a bargain but a choice. Every time I walk past that door, I whisper the same words. Thank you, Margaret. We did it. And somewhere, I like to believe, she whispers back. Yes, Edward. He's ready now.